again and welcome to Unplug It, back for our third show for 2020. Plenty to talk about. The AFLW season in full swing. A heartbreaking defeat, unfortunately, last weekend, and some really significant matchups ahead for the men's side as well, with Collingwood this weekend, our last hit out before the Kangaroos in round one. And obviously the breaking news around the China game, which is no more. That returns to a conventional home game at Marvel Stadium on the 7th of June. And hopefully, given the Saints have lost a fair bit of cash out of this China deal, we can get lots of fans along to that one to pack the joint out and at least help ease the squeeze on the revenue. Darren Parkin is my name, Aaron McGrath and Nick Splitter with me every week. Nick, first of all, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, mate. It's been a big week. I guess it's always a big week at this time of year. Looking forward to what's coming next. And, we've got a lot to talk about.
We certainly do, and obviously that Port game front and centre in a moment, but H, nice to have you with us as well.
Yeah, it's great to be back. That Port game being changed to my birthday, coincidentally, so I still probably won't be able to make it to the game, even though it's a lot closer than what it was originally.
Yeah, I mean, we probably knew before we even did our first show this year that this was going to happen. We believed that it would probably be Marvel, but then there was talk for a while that maybe it would be Cairns, because I think St Kilda were trying to sell that to the Queensland government in an attempt to make some of that money that they've lost out of the Port Adelaide deal. But football-wise, it's not a bad result to be playing at Marvel. We haven't played Port there since 2013, but obviously financially it's a bit of a kick.
Yeah, well, I think if we can get 40,000 there, it's probably help the coffers a little bit. But it is, in a footy sense, it's a big win for us. Like you said, we haven't played Port in Melbourne. 2013, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it gives us a greater chance of getting the 4 points. The money thing is, I guess, at that stage, nearly irrelevant. You're right now, the big thing is getting a win and banking those points.
Yeah, and it basically puts 9 of our first 11 at Marvel now.
Yep.
So really got to get a good amount of wins out of those to try and launch into the second half of the season. That's one game we can... Over there, we're probably going to go, okay, we saw what happened last year and what their record is there and how we're going to go, but back it up Marvel now, it's a bit more of a game that we can look and go, let's win that.
I think we had the coronavirus last year, didn't we? We had it before everyone else did. 12 months ago. It was a bit of a...
the toilet paper's gone.
Yeah, it was a disastrous trip for us last time around. But, yes, I think the only thing is it's moved, hasn't it? So we still have the bye, or we play when we would have had the bye, is that right? And we have the bye when we would have played?
I think that's how it worked, yeah.
Because it was scheduled for the 31st of May,
it's just switched.
which I think is now a bye, and then we play the following week, and then go straight to Townsville,
Darwin.
is it? Or Darwin for the Gold Coast?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it sounded like the Queensland government didn't want to pony up the cash.
Yeah, fair
which
enough.
Might turn out to be a win for us anyway. So.
Well, that's right. I mean, at the end of the day, if you... Whilst it is $700,000, you are obviously angling towards the 4 points, and Port will probably be in a similar position to us, sort of fighting for hopefully spots in the lower part of the 8. So,
well, basically, if we're playing good football, we'll make that catch up anyway.
Yeah,
that's what we need to aim for. It looks like,
and that's the side that there's a lot of sides I'd like to beat, but at the moment I wouldn't mind beating Port based on all of that recent history. So. We played them at the start of 2012, and they beat us by a kick in one of the most poorly umpired games I've ever seen. 2013, I think they were 10 goals up at Marvel. We came back and hit the front, and they beat us by a kick again. Obviously, 2016, at the start of the year, we probably lost that game due to playing no practice match in Queensland, and we ran out of gas, and they overran us from 4 goals up. Then the Robbie Gray game the following year in 2017.
We call it the Paddy Ryder game now.
Oh, yeah, the Paddy Ryder game. And then this disaster last year in China, we've had some pretty frustrating losses to Port.
Yep. It'd be good to get him back here, just to see the difference in what we'll be able to put on the field and new players that we've brought in. He looked great the other night. He's going to love playing at Marvel, and just a bit more pace, because I think they're a little bit of a slower side. If we can break their lines and basically beat them with a bit of pace, I think we can get him.
What were our thoughts on the Hawthorn game? Obviously a solid showing. We're expected to probably win given the occasion, but good to get it done.
Yeah, it was a good night down Moorabbin. It's going to be a bit different to what the old days were. Obviously, it's not as feral, not as
no animal closure.
I think they had a bit more beer back then, though.
Yeah.
Apparently, it all ran out.
I think it ran out pretty early as well.
Yeah. Then I think they did a slab run or bottle-o run, bought a few more slabs, and then ran out again. So.
Yeah. Oh,
Luckily,
they were
there's
actually
bottle-os around there.
actual Carlton draft tents. So I was a bit like, okay. When I heard that, I thought it was a bit strange. But yeah, I saw a few people with the Great Northern, whatever they were. So I thought,
I think they were the two beers, Carlton Draft and Great Northern.
At least there's still something there, I guess, but obviously not catering to what people wanted.
What I think happened was they sold out the AFL, well, not sold out, but got a full house at the AFLW game the week before, and they must have had probably the same amount of grog and thought this will be all right. But you got a Sunday afternoon sort of family session.
Yeah.
Then you've got a Thursday night.
All adults.
All the old timers rocking up. Yeah, there was clearly going to be more cans drunk on that.
The numbers were reported as very similar, but I reckon there was probably more at the Hawthorn game.
Probably.
I think so.
It felt a lot tighter and a lot more compacted with fans. There was not as many because a lot of people were sitting down at the AFLW. It was mainly standing for the Marsh series. So I reckon the number might have been a little bit, I don't know, was one high, one low, not 100% certain.
What do we make of Max?
Yeah, it looks likely. I was really impressed, actually, with the way that we moved the ball throughout the game. I thought we moved the ball quickly. We tried to play on. We were very slick in possession and on offense. It was something that I think was a clear, distinct difference from at times over the last couple of years. Obviously, when Rats took over, kind of for the final third of last season, we kind of saw that start to happen, but it was a lot more clear in this game against Hawthorn. Just how high a priority Rats and the team have put on moving the ball quickly and really, working on those structures to allow them to play on and move the ball, be direct. Quick hand pass, short kicks, long kicks down the wing.
Gives a player running towards goal, not and picking the ball up and going, oh, there's someone back
skill,
there. Yeah.
And the skill to be able to kick it into space where someone's able to run onto it, which is something that we haven't done a lot in the last couple of years. And it was really impressive, even just in that practice match environment, I guess, to see an uptick in skill level and pace of play.
Yeah, I mean, Hill's first kick into the forward line only a couple of minutes into straight onto Membry's chest. It was sort of beautiful. Like, I'm done for the night already. There we go.
Take him off.
Yep.
Take him off.
No, he was good, Membry, too. I think he had 24 and took 14 marks or something like that and kicked 4 goals. And
really showed why he's so highly rated within the club as a leader. I think it would have been easy for a lot of those guys to kind of rest on their laurels and go, Hanbury's out, Geary's out, etc. But for him to kind of lead from the front, we're so used to that. We had that with Rewalt for so long that I think there's been a bit of a gap over the last few years in the forward line, and I really think that he's ready to step up and take that mantle. He'll be our number 1 forward this year. Yep. You can't expect Max King to be a number 1 forward. I think he'll be a number 2 or 3 forward for us.
Yeah.
But Membry looks like he's in for a big year.
But at the same time, the team that was disabled in the last pod, whoever we play can't just go, oh, King's only a first-year player.
Yeah, exactly.
He's going to clunk marks and kick goals every week.
Absolutely.
So someone has to go onto him, which is going to... the second best defender is going to sit on one of them every week.
Yeah.
Didn't see a lot of the second Hawthorn game. Did we see Jimmy Webster in that? Because obviously there's no one on the injury list at the moment. The official injury list has no names on it. Yeah. He's sort of the forgotten man. He hardly played in the second half of last year with sort of back and wrist and various other issues that he had along the way. But he's one that you sort of see in that defensive end. If you've got Geary, Carlisle, Howard, Dylan Robertson obviously back into the fold, Savage sort of running off there as well.
Austin.
Where he fits into the mould, because I don't mind him as a player.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he did play. I heard he was going to, but I didn't see anything apart from score updates every now and then. And I mean, they weren't. After a while, I went, I'm not going to bother looking at them anymore.
Yeah,
sort of thing. And
I was listening. I don't recall hearing his name at all, if not often. But that commentary was pretty frustrating itself. I remember I turned that off halfway through the third quarter. I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, I think the moment they said at the start that they were looking forward to watching Jade Gresham play when he was in action the following night, or the same night, I think, in the state game.
I'll wait and watch a couple of hours later, obviously.
Yeah, they might have had the TV on in the box or something like that. But they were pretty sharp in that first game. We've got Collingwood this week, who I imagine will field a strongish team because obviously Grundy and Pendlebury and all that played in the Origin game, so they'll play no Treloar, who's pinged a hammy. But I mean, it doesn't matter too much. But I mean, I think we'll see Hanbury for the first time in one of these matches.
Jones,
Zach Jones, who
played the other day, I think. But
Zach Jones was the one, I think, in the second Hawthorn game. He had 34 touches or something.
Yeah.
So
good to see him in a proper hit out, though.
And it'll finalise something that resembles the best 22.
I think it'll be pretty close to the best unit lining up this week, maybe a few extras.
Do they rest Howard and Gresham, who have played twice? So they played the first game and then the state game? Hill and Gresham?
Maybe Hill. I think you just got to I think you just play Gresham. I think you got to play him. I think he's one of those types that just needs the run out.
He played mainly forward for those games anyway. So if Hill doesn't play, put him into the middle for a bit and see how he goes there. And I mean, that gives us an idea of the coverage we have, and it gives him against a good midfield.
Well, I think the whole idea of bringing guys like Butler and you've got Kent coming back, Jack Loney seems to be in good form, that Gresham can play more through the midfield. And so I imagine that they play him and give him those midfield minutes. Because he will need to get those Ks up before round one.
You'll basically be able to play switch either wherever they need him at that time and that sort of thing. So, The
interesting one will be where we think Luke Dunstan might fit into that midfield. He finished last season quite well. You look at, obviously, the mix. He's not always an automatic selection, but you feel like he's good enough too.
I'd have him in there.
Yeah, I thought he was pretty automatic by the end of the year.
Watching the other night against Hawthorn, he was in there getting the hard ball, hitting it out, handballing it out, just getting in there and getting it. And that's basically what he is there for.
Late last year, he seemed to be better at that kind of spread and ground coverage as well. He seemed to move a bit better. I don't know if he dropped some weight or what it was, or whether his running technique had been worked on throughout the year, or whether it was just having the freedom of a slightly different role under Brett Ratton. But he did seem to cover the ground better. His disposal looked better. He kicked a couple of goals in a few of those late season games, and just seemed to be more dangerous all around. And I would have him in our best 22 undoubtedly at this stage.
The AFLW girls last week's a very good win against Melbourne. So since we've last spoke, they've had their first win. They certainly should have had a second. It was a pretty costly game. They lose and go 1-3 in a short season, where they've only got three or four games to rectify that, and they lose players to injury as well. So I think it showed that even though the Gold Coast have been all right, it showed that we're the best of the new teams, of the growth teams. And I think had we not, we should have beaten Adelaide, we should have beaten Fremantle, and we're effectively jumped maybe stage fright in the first game against the Bulldogs. So 1-3 should have been 3-1 and could have been 4-0.
Yes, we definitely should have beaten Adelaide, and we should have beaten Freo. That, like you said, that Bulldogs one, they jumped us at the start, and there was a bit of experience and inexperience on our end, but
because they're not that good, the Doggies.
They're not, and realistically, in a slightly different universe, this team could be 3-1 or 4-0 even. They've played well enough in patches of all of those games to have won all of them.
Yeah, that was just nervousness at the start of the first game, it looks like. They haven't conceded the same. They've pretty much let out the box the next three games when you look at it. So
I think what the Bulldogs scored in that first 10 minutes is what
they
the
won by,
have
basically.
Scored against them in the three other games.
And what they won by, so it's just settling in and getting an even four quarters instead of a terrible first quarter and three good ones, or three good ones and not a great bad last quarter like against Adelaide. It's just getting a consistent four quarters. They might not be the world-beating four quarters, but they're good enough to get four good ones together.
I think just knowing that they're good enough for long enough to compete against those good teams. I mean, Adelaide, consensus, one of the better teams in the competition. Fremantle, one of the favourites for the AFLW Premiership this year.
Yeah, only undefeated team.
Yeah,
shouldn't be, but
they shouldn't be. Yeah. They're a quality outfit, and we took it up to them for 3.5 quarters, really, in both of those games.
Yeah.
Even in the Adelaide game when they started to get on top, we still threw a bit at them in that last quarter. They just overran us. But it's been very impressive despite the three losses.
Key moments, obviously the Adelaide one that was touched on the line when you're probably about to seal the game, and obviously the 50 against Fremantle where it's 6 points of difference with a couple of minutes to go. I know a few people have spoken about it. Peter Searle was one. It's clearly, as the rules of the game are written, a 50-metre penalty. I was watching the game on silent and saw that and immediately sort of threw my head back thinking that's 50. The only thing I will debate is whether 50-metre penalties are too harsh, full stop. So not just in women's football where maybe not every player kicks it that distance, so it's almost two kicks sometimes as a penalty. But I think in football in general, so in the AFL, if you in the men's AFL, I think it should be a 50-metre penalty if it's something intentional. So
Yeah,
you deliberately hold someone up, you flatten
Yeah.
them, you belt them. But if it's something like walking across the mark,
or throwing the ball back, and
or
by half a metre,
or a lapse in concentration, so you put the ball on the ground, which you're not allowed to do. To me, that's
15,
in all footy, 15 or 25 even, which is still a gettable shot at the end of that, but it's obviously not an absolute lay down misère. So.
Yeah, it has a fair bit of merit, that sort of thing. I mean, it used to be 15 metres for everything.
Yeah, that was, I think Kevin Sheedy exploited that in the 80s when they kept playing Hawthorn, where they deliberately hold a player every time they took a mark. And
they'd be 80 out.
Yeah, it'd be a 15-metre penalty, it'd be nothing, but it would give them time to get players back.
Still 2 kicks, 2 goal in that situation, but change it, and then they're kicking from right in front, basically. So, it's maybe something they could look at some stage.
Yeah, good to see that sort of atmosphere at Moorabbin as well. We've got the new G train that obviously won us the game against the against the D's.
Rising Star.
Yeah.
Second for the year.
Second for the year. So there's a lot of positives, but yeah, I mean, it's in a 7-game season. It's unfortunately a pretty crippling loss. We've got Carlton this week, who are a pretty good team.
Not unbeatable, though.
No, Collingwood dismantled them. I mean, if you work it out on balances, Collingwood beat Carlton, Melbourne beat Collingwood, we beat Melbourne. So Fremantle also beat Collingwood, and we should have beaten Fremantle. So it obviously puts you into that mix for those matches. I think we actually play the Pies at some stage.
At the last round,
Victoria Park.
A few ex-Blues running around for us as well.
True.
Might have something to say about it.
So they're 1 and 3, and for the guys, it is Collingwood at Morwell, so second game at Morwell down in the Latrobe Valley as the final hit out before the season. And touch wood, that injury list stays relatively intact. It's 0 at the moment, if we can keep that in place, especially given North have got a few issues ahead of round 1.
Surely we're due a good year with injury.
You'd hope. Yeah, the last 2 have been a nightmare. 16.
The last 20 years have been
true. We had 1 or 2 reasonable years. I think 16 was okay. But apart from that, it's been a bit of a tight slog.
16, we just missed finals.
Yeah, that's right.
You look at that, and that's basically all right, we need a good year. And we've had all our players who have had previous injuries, almost full pre-seasons. Yeah, and that's the best thing running into a season with.
I think the only downside in 16 was that was the year Carlisle was suspended as a result of the Essendon business.
Yeah.
And it was his first year at the club, so that was where that one was at.
After a torrid first quarter, that was a good sign from Ferguson. Harvey now, he might kick his second goal. He's done everything in this quarter, and he's done a bit more now.
Harvey tries to take Simmons on, buys another 20 metres from hard on the boundary. That's a sensational kick. Robert Harvey, excellent work.
Harvey, therefore, I declare Robert Harvey of the St Kilda Football Club the winner of the 1997 Brownlow medal.
Well, when discussions are centred around who the greatest St Kilda player of all time is, there are probably 5 names that consistently get a mention and are just about the 5 that should get a mention every time. It is Darryl Baldock, Ian Stewart, Tony Lockett, Nick Riewoldt and Robert Harvey, who is our special guest on the podcast today. 2-time Brownlow medalist, AFL Players Association MVP, 8 All-Australians, 4 St Kilda Best and Fairest, finished in the top 3 on 10 occasions, is in the St Kilda Team of the Century and was a 3-time EJ Whitten medalist for Victoria, 383 games, which is a club record and number 5 in the AFL. Robert, thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure, boys. How are we going?
Going very well. Nice to have you with us. I guess as we go back to the start of the journey, and it is, as we know, a fair way back. Your first coach was one of those names we just mentioned that would be in that conversation in Darryl Baldock. It was seen as an exciting time for the club, although 88 had been a bit of a battle. You were 16 years of age. You made your debut late in the season, and as I understand it, it came with a bit of a guarantee, which I imagine would have been good for a young player. I think Darryl Baldock said that you would have your place in the side for that entire last month, regardless of what happened.
Yeah, well, that's a very long time ago now. I was playing well before my time. I wasn't playing well enough to probably hold my position, but Doc's did tell me that the season was gone for us anyway. We were last, I think, in the And he just said, you'll be playing the last 4 games no matter what. So that was good reassurance for me because, as I said, I wasn't playing well enough. And it probably was a reflection of where we were at the time, because I started under 19s that year. I played the first 8 games and then played 6 in the reserves and was straight to the seniors. So it was a bit of a whirlwind, to be honest. I was still doing year 11 at John Paul College, so my head was spinning. As I said, I was probably a bit before my time, but I'm glad it all happened. It was a great experience, and I learned a lot from it.
Rob, Nick Splitter here. Thanks for coming on the show, mate. Just a quick question about that time and being at that age. At that stage, did you have visions of being great, or was it literally just trying to get out there and have a kick and run around and get a jumper?
No, quite honestly, like my dad, the pre-season before that, like so that going into that season, was dragging me in the car to get me to go to the under-19 training camp. I wouldn't go because I was so happy doing what I was doing at Seaford, and I just played in an under-17 Premiership there, pretty much the only one I played in, and I just didn't want to go, and I just didn't think I thought it was a waste of time. So Dad really just dragged me in the car saying, at least got to go, and I just kept making it, like I made a cut to the final 80. And then a cut to the final 60, and then a cut to the final 40. But literally, I thought I was just playing out time to go back to play at Seaford. And even they had that old probables v the possibles under 19s game where there's 2 games on, and the more likely ones are playing in the later game, and the unlikely ones in the early game. And I was in the early game, and I managed just to squeak in and play round 1, where I played in the back pocket. I remember playing back pocket against Fitzroy at Moorabbin in my first under-19s game, and as you guys or anyone would know that's seen me play, that's not going to last long for me playing back pocket. So I was on the bench by quarter time, and I definitely thought this was going to be it. This is definitely get your orders, get the arse, get back to Seaford and do your thing. And as fate would have it, I started on the bench next week, and one of our boom recruits, who's a country kid, went down in the second quarter in the midfield, and I got my chance there. And I thought I'd, in a lot of ways, didn't look back. It was just the opportunity I needed. It was talk about sliding doors. Anything could happen. I literally could have been back and out of the team in round 2 and never been seen again.
Do you remember who that recruit from the country was?
You know what? I've tried to think about that, and I can't remember his name, but I know his face. I just can't remember his name. And if I had a playing list and that was at Windy Hill, it was round 2 at Windy Hill, I'd probably pick his name, but I can't remember it. But it was it was a sliding door moment for sure.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for joining us, Rob. Now, thinking about similar time, a few people probably do know that you were a little bit of a handy cricketer at that point. Was there much of a danger to that taking over football? And if you had, do you reckon you might have gone far with that or not? Or was it ever?
Yeah. Well, no, I was definitely playing cricket. I loved it. I probably loved it more than I loved it as much as I did footy, and I thought I was a little bit better at that stage at cricket, but I probably, in the end, I was probably limited. I played, ended up playing. I was about that time. I ended up playing Victorian under 19s and did all that. Did all those things, and I really loved it. And I remember in the early stages of our my under 19 days, which was pretty brief, and our full forward was none other than Shane Warne, who was at that stage more unfit, and he was our full forward. But I remember clearly talking to him about, because I think I was playing cricket at Oakley and I was about to go play in Fitzroy Doncaster, so I was playing sub-district, about to go play district cricket, and he was already playing at St Kilda. But I remember him telling me he was playing in the fourths and the thirds, and like I said, what do you do? And he said, leg spinner, and I'm playing in the thirds and fourths, but he was more into his footy at that stage, and as it sort of flipped around for us both there, and I remember 2 years later thinking, shit, that's Warnie. He's playing Test cricket for Australia, and didn't take long.
That's sliding doors if we ever see it.
A young bloke more into his footy becomes the greatest leg spinner of all time, and a young bloke more into his cricket goes on to win 2 Brownlows at the Saints and play 380 games.
It flipped around. It was interesting. It was a good time.
Now that we spoke to Stuart Lowe a little bit about Moorabbin memories, which is quite topical with St Kilda being back there. But your second ever victory at Moorabbin was one of the most famous wins at Moorabbin, the game against Carlton in '89, where Plugger kicks 10, including the winning goal. I guess, can you just encapsulate Moorabbin for you and those memories? You would have played there for 5 years up until we bid farewell to the ground in '92. But when that ground was really pumping, because as you emerged as a player, St Kilda emerged as a team and would obviously be playing finals by the early 90s?
Yeah. Oh, look, and as Lowy would have said last week, it's unforgettable to be able to say you played there. And my career went for a long time, 21 years, but I think my fondest memories are of those days, of the Moorabbin days, and just the atmosphere of that ground was something that and unless you actually were there to experience it, it's hard to describe it. And when Lockett was rampaging and the noise that was made and the stands would shake, it was just it was an experience that you just never forget, and it was a privilege to have been able to be a part of it. Not only that, to see just the terraces full of people, just in their routines. I remember playing the reserves. You get there at 10:30, and people setting up in the same spots, every week with their barbecues and their same, looking at their records out, looking at the young players, and it was just it was an amazing experience. Like it was a phenomenal thing, and something I'll never forget.
By extension to that, we spoke about Tony Lockett there. Your record over the course of your career with some of the greatest forwards the club has ever had. So you started your career delivering the ball to Tony Lockett. Stuart Lowe was obviously around the mark, and then Fraser Garrick, Nick Riewoldt, obviously later on in your career. You could argue, probably throwing the dock in there, that they're four of the best five forwards St Kilda have ever produced. So as much as they were blessed to have you delivering the footy to them, what was it like breaking out of the middle and always having someone like that leading up at the footy?
Look, and as you said, like when you reel off names like that, like you didn't really have to be perfect with your kicking or your delivery. They do the rest for you, but they're all different in their own ways. And like Plugger, and you throw in Stu Lowe himself, his hands were unbelievable. Like I think I've seen a guy take a contested mark like Stuart Lowe. He was unbelievable marking of the ball, and Plugger obviously in his own way, like just. You just had to get the ball somewhere near him in a one-on-one. If it was slightly to his advantage, he'd mark it every time. Like he was clearly the best player I've ever seen. Like and just the talent that guy had on him, it was a phenomenal player. And obviously Riewoldt, who more of an athlete, what a great athlete he was, and so courageous as well. But they're all so different, but in their own ways, just so brilliant. And yeah, probably at the time you take it for granted because you always had a good forward there. And then now I'm in coaching, and you see how hard it is to find A-grade forwards in your team. We're just always so blessed to have those forwards in our team, and I think it's sort of something that the fans could always connect with, having that forward in the team, and like they just loved it, and we loved it. It was even when Lockett went, I think everyone thought the joint would fall down, but life went on, and we found Riewoldt and Gehrig and Stu Lowe stepped up, and it was just a great time.
Just on that, there's a bit of footage doing the rounds on social media this week because of Fraser Garrick's birthday against North Melbourne. I think it was 03, 04-ish. Clip of you streaming down the middle with about 20 seconds to go, 30 seconds to go, and delivering it long to Fraser Garrick in the goal square for the winning goal. Do you remember that game? Do you remember what was going through your mind in that moment? Did you see him there kind of on his own thinking, we've got this?
No. Well, I vaguely remember the game, but I'm not I'm hopeless with social media, as anyone would know. But all the Collingwood players, during yesterday, had seen it, and they're asking me about it. And they were embellishing it a bit. Like Taylor Adams was saying, I was steaming through the middle. What do you say? I was like streaming through the middle. I said, now I know you're full of shit. I was about 34 at the time, but I was in space. I know I was in a lot of space, and I reckon the ball, like, it was, I don't know how long it was in the last minute of the game, I would have thought, and we were a couple of points down. But it's just back then the game was so like open. Even then, it was literally went from deep in our defence all the way and to Fraser within 10 seconds. I reckon it was really quick. And no, I just remember seeing him. He used to love those angle leads, so it was more of a one where he was on one side of the field rather than coming straight up, and he was leading back sort of diagonally towards goal. So it was all you had to do was just put it in that big hole of space. He was always going to run onto it, and he was only 15 out. So, it was a good memory, and he was a ripper player, Fraser, and like he only lives around the corner from me now, so I see him a little bit still, and what a great man.
Now, we've seen the return of State of Origin in sorts just recently, which you were involved with a little bit yourself. But going back to when you were playing there and lining up in the Big V, and just how much did it mean back then, especially being able to also line up alongside teammates like Plugger and Lowy and Berkey and them, and just obviously we don't really have that anymore, but how big was it back in the day?
Oh, it was pretty big. Like one of my first games, like I remember getting on the plane, I think I was 19 or 20, I reckon, and I was sitting in between Timmy Watson and Simon Madden, and I was a mad Essendon supporter as a kid, so I just remember just pinching myself, thinking, how good is this? And all the way to South Australia, I was just telling them how much stories about me going to Windy Hill and watching those two play. So, yeah, I'll never forget it. And it was just the whole experience back then with EJ and Bobby Skilton, and then later days Dipper and Gerard Healy. They had a real passion for it. So they drove those officials and those guys who run the program. They just loved it. So they drove it so hard, and the players really bought into it. And obviously, once the interstate teams come in, it drifted a bit. But it was a pretty good experience. And I remember I was telling a few of the, because I coached the assistant coach to the game last week. And I was telling a few of the players just about how it used to unfold. Like I used to play Saturday at Moorabbin, and we'd go to the disco, and it'd be a big night Saturday night. Recovery Sunday was was pretty loose at the club, and then Monday we used to get. I was saying to the players, we used to get flogged a bit on the Mondays at training. So we'd often train for a couple of hours on Monday night, which players never do now. So you'd train on Monday night, and then you'd fly out to South Australia on the Tuesday, play State of Origin Tuesday night, and anyone who's on those trips would know there was a big after game celebration. The EJ and Bobby and the boys who run that program, you'd back at the hotel, be drinking, and before you knew it, it was Wednesday morning, and you'd be going back to get on the plane straight to the airport, and then you'd fly back to Melbourne, straight to Moorabbin, train again on the Wednesday, and then play again on the Saturday. It was just it was amazing. It was an amazing experience. Play 3 games in a week, just like a carnival sort of atmosphere. It was really good.
Your memories of those Brownlow years, 97 and 98, contrasting years for you and where the club was at. Obviously, 97, you won a Brownlow. We know the circumstances around Chris Grant, but St Kilda was 5 days away from playing in a historic grand final. Then the following year, you won the Brownlow easily with a record number of votes, but Stan Elves, I think, had been sacked on the same day, and we'd had a relatively disappointing end to that season. So brilliant times for you personally, but I imagine the weeks themselves couldn't possibly have been more different.
No, well, when I think back to those times, I think my overriding emotion on those 2 years is sort of what went wrong. Like, I just remember that first Brownlow, like that night, thinking, we're playing the grand final, or your mind, because I went there with Spider Everett in the car straight from training, like on Monday night, and thinking, how good's this? We're playing the grand final. And then the Brownlow sort of happened, and but we're straight back on, just with our focus on the game, and it was just such a great time. And then obviously, the whirlwind of the 98 and what happened with Stan Elves, and when I think back now, like all those years ago, I just think, what happened? Like what we were just so good there for that period, and I still sort of try and get my head around how that sort of unravelled as it did in that time, because it was a really, it had so much promise and so much hope, and I think, even the grand final itself, to be up at half time and not play our best in the second half just was so disappointing. So my overriding emotion is just almost like, trying to, what did happen? Like, it was just, I don't understand how that sort of totally, within 2 years after that 98 season, we're on the bottom of the ladder again. It was just so weird in that experience. So I look back on it really with mixed emotions, because obviously it was a great time, and I was probably in the peak of my career physically and as a player. But I just can't work out what happened with our team.
Now, you did mention you Spider Everett there. We've had him on a previous episode. Now, he mentioned something about you being a bit of a blackjack player. So he told us that pretty much you'd chuck your money out there and then let them play. Much truth to that story, or?
Well, I'd love to know what else he said, because he, in what context he said it. Because we used to, it was usually late at night, and I imagine that's what he's getting at. So, but I hardly ever played. But I just know they used to have. We used to play blackjack together, and he used to. He carries on. But. Yeah, I'll let him tell all those stories, because he's. I can't really remember too much about it.
It was about 6 months ago, I think you told us, and I'm pretty sure there were a couple of Jim Beam and Cokes involved, and that sort of thing in the background. Harves, obviously at the top of this segment, Parko ran off a list of accolades and honours that you picked up throughout your career. On top of that, I think Mike Sheahan named you in his 50 all-time greatest players of the AFL in about 2008, 2009. Is there something that sticks out, either in terms of an achievement, an accolade, or just a moment in your career that kind of sticks out as your number one moment?
Probably not a moment, like not one thing. Probably it's more, as you get older, as I said, I'm still involved in footy, so I'm still around young guys all the time. It's probably more just, or you just see teammates. Like, I think the thing that probably frustrates me the most is constantly having to feel like I'm defending, the club or our era, our period or something. We had some really, really good people at the club. Then there still is now. I played with some really good people as players, not just players, but as people. And it probably really hit home to me in Spud's stuff last year with all the Spuds. Circumstances it makes you reflect, and the real close guys you play with makes you even closer. And it just makes you think, you reflect so much on what good times we did have. Like, most of those are off the field, but we get together more now than we ever did, because it's so important to us. And there's nothing, because we didn't play in that premiership, or we just didn't quite get there. It doesn't mean that was all to waste. It was a really good place to be. Don't take anything back, or don't regret anything, and so I'm really proud of the people and the club that it was. So it's probably more of an overall thing than anything, than just and for whatever reason with St Kilda, there's just that emotion attached to it that's always been there, and that's something that goes back to Moorabbin, Waverley, Etihad. It's something that's always there with the club, and it's something that it was a privilege to be a part of. So I'm really, really proud and happy that I do that. And you had Stu Lowe on the show last week. He would say the same. He's one of my best mates. He'd say the same thing. It's just a great place, and I really I feel privileged to have played there.
And even from the relative outside position as spectators, we do know what you mean when you say there is sort of something there. It is a hard one to explain. And I guess on that note, well done. We said that to Stewie as well. Well done to you and to he and everybody else, at the funeral, but also at the best and fairest last year for your comments. Last one from me, which is I guess a two-parter. When asked about the best game you played, the one that comes up most frequently is probably the qualifying final against Adelaide. Again, that's probably one that you look back on maybe as a missed opportunity given what happened in the prelim. But is that perhaps the standout game that you remember most that you've played? And I guess the second part from me is there's only 4 people that have played more games than you, and they played most of their career relatively injury-free. That wasn't necessarily the case for you. Knee reco, shoulder reco, soft tissues, broken ankle, all that sort of stuff. We know your preparation was meticulous, but what do you put your longevity down to, I guess, is the second part of that, as to how you were able to survive in the game for so long?
A lot of luck, I think. And you reel off those injuries and all the stuff. I think a lot of it is just is a lot. It is a lot of luck. Like a lot of guys I played with were far more better prepared than I was. Like I trained hard, definitely, but I wouldn't say, I overly looked after myself too well. I wasn't great with a lot of stuff, and that's just the way I was. But I definitely trained really hard, and maybe that's why I did break down a bit. In the fact, I didn't. Like I look at a guy like Scotty Penderbury, who I coach now, and he prepares so much better than I did. So. No, I think a lot of luck. A lot of it is drive and desire. Like I just was so driven to play. I just always felt like we were just around the corner from that premiership, and even 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8, even 2008 when I finished, played in the prelim. Like we were just so close all through those years, and I don't know. I was just thinking maybe one more just to give us, get me over the line to the. Like I just felt like it was an inch away all the time, and that's probably what drove me the most to keep playing on. In the end, I look back now, I probably might have played too long, but I just felt like, it'd drive you just to do that extra bit, or just that extra session, or the fire just didn't go out because I didn't. Maybe if I had won a flag in 2005 or whatever it was, it might have, but yeah, because it was still. I was still chasing the dream. It was, I was so hungry all the time. That's probably what made me play for so long.
Harves, when you retired in 2008, it seemed like you moved almost seamlessly from a playing career into coaching and being an assistant coach at Carlton. The senior coach at Carlton at the time was none other than Brett Ratten. What was it like working under Rats, and what should Saints fans expect from a Ratten-led team?
Yeah, no, it was a really good experience for me. And the thing is with my transition, in 2007 and 8, I had a really good relationship with Ross Lyon, who was coaching St Kilda at the time. So I said to him all along, like, whenever you want me to finish, just tap me on the shoulder and, I'm done. I was sort of always in close conversation with him, not only about me, but about the team. And because he was only just starting out himself. So we had a really, as close enough. That probably sparked me a little bit into the coaching side of it, because I was just really I hadn't experienced a coach like him before. For whatever reason, I don't know, it just resonated with me. And then going to Carlton, getting away from St Kilda, somewhere you've just known all your life, just to get somewhere different like Carlton was great. And yeah, Rats was super. He was so good, such a relaxed. Loves a laugh, loves flair and attack and excitement. And that's what I think what St Kilda fans could expect with him. And overall, he's just a really good person. And I really enjoyed my time. I only had 2 years there, but really enjoyed that time with him. And to be honest, he was probably a bit stiff in the first time round with Carlton. So it's great he's got a second chance, and hopefully he does really well at the Saints.
And just to finish off, basically, there's been a story that's gone around for years and years now. You came out with a plantar fascia injury, and we've heard the stories of jumping off a chair to jumping off the table to jumping off the top of the fridge to try and get this injury sorted. Do you want to put to bed exactly how high you were jumping from and what you were doing and anything. Just basically a little rundown for anyone who doesn't know the story behind it.
Yeah, well, I tend not to get through any speaking or quick Q&As without getting asked about it. It's I get podiatry students going through uni ringing me up saying, I'm doing this thesis on plantar fascia and I heard you did this thing. And so it's something that never quite tends to leave me, this one. But at the time, it just felt like common sense, to be honest. I think Fraser had it and Cozzy had it at the time, and they both didn't get better until they snapped it through, which took them a couple of months, I think, of playing footy, and because it would just tear gradually, and then every week it'd tear a little bit, till eventually it would snap, and then for whatever reason, once you snapped it, it was fine. So it was almost like you didn't need it. It was weird, and I only just started getting it, so I just said to the physio, well, if those two boys went through all that pain, and I was thinking I was 33 or something at the time, so I was thinking I was probably going to be in my last year, and I just didn't want to experience that in my last year. So I said to him, like, when I come tomorrow, it's going to be done. And he sort of laughed at me, and I just made sure all the family was out, all the kids were out, and Danielle was out, and I just went out in the backyard, and I think we had a backyard sort of furniture table that was probably a bit bigger than a normal kitchen table, probably, I don't know how high, but high enough. So just jumped off that about 20 times, I reckon. And your natural instinct is to protect it. So it took me a while just to have the balls to let it go. And once I let it go, it just snapped completely, and it bruised up. And I was rolling around the backyard, like a little squeal, and squeal on the way. And a bruise came straight up, black, and I was brand new, and I turned up at the club next day, and sure enough, showed the physio, and it said, told you, and it was done, and that was it. Didn't and I did get some calls like for a while, like from other clubs, people from other clubs who have had it, like, because it's such a frustrating injury, like it's like someone's driving a nail on your foot, and I had a guy, one particular guy from interstate who rang me and said, like, he's been battling this for ages, and I suggested what he do, but he took it a bit far. He jumped off a fence, fixed his plantar fascia, broke his ankle. I think he's out for 12 months. So he took it a bit far, but no, it was one of those things that you just, I don't know, footy does funny things to you sometimes, and I was pretty desperate to fix it up.
There are a lot of reasons why you're a club great, and that's not a bad way to finish, I think, in terms of that level of commitment. Harves, thank you very much for giving us some of your time. Good luck with the Magpies and everything that you're doing in a coaching sense as well. And, thank you for your contribution to the club over such a long period of time.
Thanks for having me on, boys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, everyone always feels good in pre-season. Obviously, we've got the real stuff starts in a couple of weeks, and got another little run at it again on Sunday against Collingwood. But so far, pre-season's been pretty good, and hopefully we can just take that form into round one. But obviously, there's got to be some little tweaks and things we need to work on and keep on going, and we want to improve each week. So.
I think it's probably important that we start to, nail our game sort of structure and style that we want to play. So. I'm not quite sure if that's the way we're going to go, but if we do go that way, then it'll be game on.
Well, they were the voices of Bradley Hill and Tim Membry in the lead-up to Sunday's Marsh Community Series match against Collingwood, and also a special mention before we welcome our next guest into the studio of the passing of Bill Young, former St Kilda star, 88 years of age, played 94 games for the Saints and kicked 276 goals. He won the league goal kicking in his first year in 1956, won a retrospective Coleman medal for that. But speaking of Coleman medals, John Coleman is the only other player to win the league goal kicking in his first season at the level. So Vale to Bill, one of the club greats from the 1950s and early 1960s, going to jump inside the club now with senior analyst at the football club, Darren O'Shannessy, joining us. And Darren, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. Good to be here.
I guess explaining that title to us, we spoke off air that sometimes titles can be a little bit vague, but if you were to describe your job day-to-day at the Saints, what would it be?
Yeah, so the title's senior analyst, which can cover a lot of different things, but mainly my job's just dealing with data. So analysing it, communicating to the coaches and to the recruiters and to the list managers what that means, and even to the club as a whole. Trying to find our own researchers, trying to do things that are different from the other clubs, as well as keeping a hold on what makes sense from other sports. So there's it's sort of a wide brief. Any way that we can improve the data analysis at the club, the culture around sort of decision making based on the best use of what's out there.
So how bigger thing has data become these days? I mean, the old football used to be basically, we're playing this team's how they line up, this is who you'll be on, that's it. Is there positions made because of certain ways players play games? It's a way that you'll bring a player on at this time because of how they work or how other teams, things you pick up from what they do. How much is based around it data these days?
And there's a lot to that. So the different clubs use it in different ways. I think if you're digging down far enough to say, should this guy from a strategic point of view come on at the 10-minute mark or the 15-minute mark, you're making more of a guess or making too much of it. But there's certainly management of the performance data, and we have a really good guy, Daniel Hoffman's joined us in the last few months, who deals with the information science and the data analysis of our performance data. So he's across that along with our existing performance staff. So yes, there's a lot of data, and AFL's got this history right through VFL, right back to the start of the competition, that it was rich in collected data and this language around how many touches players are getting and what's important. In a way, some other sports have really moved ahead in the last few years. There's player tracking data. There's all sorts of things that's going on that we haven't quite kept up with in the AFL. But there's still more than enough to keep several of us busy.
In how much of your, I guess, day-to-day is taken up in using that data to predict outcomes and kind of the future strength of the list or a player or whatnot?
Yeah, so there's a number of different projects on the go all the time. So at some stage we look at what seems to give the best bang for buck out of the time that our analysts have to improve our performance on the field, long-term, short-term. In terms of list management projects, we go back over past successful teams, see what was common about their list profiles, their demographics, where their strengths were. We've got ongoing projects. We've got a PhD student who's looking at past recruiting strategies and who seems to have been over or undervalued based on their statistics in different junior competitions. We look at obviously every player in the competition as well. So our pro scout Steve Lenny, who you've had on the podcast, he is still the pro scout and looks at evaluates the players in different ways, and we feed into that. And then there's game day strategy, monitoring what's going on live. So what seems to be costing us today, or where are we getting our lead from, or our deficit? Hopefully not too much of a deficit. So from week to week, there's probably 5 of those projects going on, and new ones coming on all the time as our staff come up with ideas.
How tricky is it to assess what data is actually relevant and what isn't? Sometimes you could have data that's can be almost erroneous or something along those. Yeah, that's right. Is that part of the challenge where you're almost looking at it saying, well, is this an outlier? Is this common? Should we be paying attention to that? Is everyone else paying attention to this?
Yeah, and that's where it's great to be sceptical in the right ways. And you'll find most of the top coaches, in fact, most of the people working in coaching in the AFL have a pretty good instinct for what's crap in the numbers. So, if you came to a coach and said, we just need to have 10 more kicks a game, that's obviously nonsense because there's no context to it. So it's about getting the context of that data a bit better. So collecting our own data. We've got an analysis academy that Chris Mackay started up last year, that we're getting extra layers around what we're doing at contests, what we're doing at stoppages especially. And we then feed that in to the chains of possession that are going on for us and for the opposition, and which ones seem to be most successful. And then we can do that across every team in the league as well.
Do many of the players chase much from you? Or is it more a case of the coaches take it and go, here, this is what we want you to know? Or is it a couple down there to go, no, I want to know a few things or anything like that?
So the more traditional sort of analyst-player relationship is centred around video, that we cut clips for them. I don't really come from that traditional analyst background. I'm more out of the data area, and occasionally I'll talk to groups of players about stuff, but it's really more of a coach's role or the traditional footy analyst role to do that. So there'll be specific times where maybe I can express it to them, but yeah, it doesn't happen too often.
We've had Steve, as you mentioned, and Chris Tochi on the show towards the end of last season, talking about recruitment and draft and trade and free agency and all that sort of stuff. How much did you have to do in that period?
That was obviously all of the postseason up leading to the draft. So I've got a bit of experience with the AFL, with the draft points system. I was one of the creators of that. So had a little bit of an insight into how you might value picks, future picks, past picks, what's in the draft this year. We were obviously pretty happy to use our meagre haul of draft picks for some pretty good guys that have come down the club. But yeah, it really is about a bit of wargaming as well. So what might other clubs be doing? How can we potentially exploit another club and they have too much of something? And every club is doing this. There are endless discussions and endless phone calls between clubs about different scenarios as well. So we just try and put a sort of rational decision-making layer on that. Not make big mistakes is probably the big thing.
Do you prefer to drum down on, say, specific data? We look at champion data and how they might pool everything they have and then come up with these lists that most of us sort of scoff at, where we looked at last year where Geelong in the back half of the year were clearly the best defensive team in the competition, and champion data had them, whatever it was, 12th. And then Brisbane, I think, had the 17th best forward line, and GWS had the 14th best midfield. Yet most of us look at it and think that's rubbish. But that's if you take every aspect of data, that's the sort of answer it gives you, whereas you guys might be more specific to, well, it's not just who's got the best midfield, who's got the best at clearances, scoring from stoppages, and each specific outcome.
Yeah, so every rating model is flawed, and I believe the champion one is a really good individual player rating model, and I've had discussions with them over time about it. But when you then just say, right, who are the players that we've got based on the times they've interacted with the ball, and that tells you what a good defence is, well, it's complete nonsense. So we know that Geelong's got a great defence. The defence is the hardest thing to rate. So what we're trying to do is prevent the other team getting a quality shot at goal, in whichever way we can. And there are a lot of ways of doing that are just with positioning, with getting an extra number, with things that will never be recorded on a traditional stat sheet. So, I respect a lot of what Champion does, and I worked there for several years. I think putting it back together in that way was probably a bad example of how to use it.
Yeah, you're at Hawthorn during the very successful years that they had there. Without going into it too deeply or anything like that, what's something that just jumped out at you while you're at the club and looking at going, this is where they're way ahead, or this is something they struggle with but are able to basically make up for it somewhere else, or what's something that really jumped out? Yeah,
so there's a couple of things. The first one, I grew up a St Kilda supporter, so
welcome back.
Knowing that sort of culture of a St Kilda supporter, that you have a loss and you sort of go into a bit of a spiral, that's, it's just another one of those, maybe we'll get another win in a few weeks. Hawthorn, after they had a loss, even a bad loss, it was like, right, we're up and about, we're going to win next week. And that was totally throughout there. And they also lived that family club sort of motto that they had as well, that everyone had care for everyone else in the club. It sounds a bit weird, but it's the way clubs are going as well, that you could be walking next to anyone, whether it was Luke Hodge or the boot starter, and you could have a conversation of mutual respect. So they did a lot of that stuff right. And then the other one was around strategy and having someone like David Rath and the other good sort of brains that have been poached by other clubs over time there to guide their decision-making and to bring experts in from different areas to tell them things they mightn't know.
Was there something, when you arrived at St Kilda, was it
last off season. Was there something that you kind of noticed within either the administration or the footy department that, based on your time, Champion Data at Hawthorn, etc., and in your experience with data, that we as a club were missing, that we weren't strong enough at, that we needed to get better at?
We really didn't have anyone building our own tools to analyse the data in different ways. So we were getting pretty good information from Champion Data, but apart from individuals with their own expertise, like Steve Lenny, who would take the data and do things with it, there wasn't really a statistician or someone with mathematical background to go through and say, well, maybe we can adjust it like this. Just something as simple as we know that's a team that's poor at stoppages, let's nudge the data that way. Just little things that give you a more reliable view. So, but the club as a whole, and under people like Simon Lethlean and Matt Finnis, they're really into this evidence-based organisation sort of stuff. So getting the people in, getting the right decisions out of a group, that part of it, they're really respectful and hearing different views.
What's the competition's sort of next buzz area, or right now the most important aspect of that data analysis? Is it things like GPS, or what's the one that seems to now be the sleeper?
Yeah, it really is either GPS or video player tracking to get that sort of information. We've seen the sort of impact that clubs like Liverpool have had in soccer, German soccer clubs as well. When you've got quality data around the spacing of players, and in our game it's even more important. I've talked to soccer analysts about, we've got 18 players on the field instead of your 10 outfielders. We can have passes in the air, we can have passes that you can't mark, and the level of complexity is just enormous. And so we're using, a lot of the time is just watching vision and saying, right, let's have an argument about where this guy should have been out of the 18 that are playing a full team defence, or out of the 13 that are behind the ball. What's our ideal shape? And that's a really hard thing for a computer to do, to analyse that. So once we can get hold of that data reliably, that will explode. But at the moment, with what we have, it's really just being more consistent around it and being responsive as well. So giving the individual experts, the coaches, the recruiters, access to tools that allow them to ask better questions, and to design those tools guided by what they think they want to know.
So just on that, you mentioned giving the recruiters better tools. I might put you a little bit on the spot here. Obviously, we had a pretty big trade period. A number of experienced players came onto the list from other clubs. Can you give us one metric, one variable for each of those players that kind of was the reason, or one of the reasons that we targeted that particular player? So obviously, a few of them are going to be self-explanatory. Bradley Hill, and you've got pace and skill. But Paddy Ryder, Dan Butler, Zach Jones. What were the reasoning, Dougal Howard, behind some of those moves from a data perspective?
I don't think I can tell you anything new there. It's pretty much public what the qualities of these guys are, and Brad Hill is in some ways the league best, at repeated, really quick running. Zach Jones has got that outside speed and some unrecognised, capabilities around how he, attacks from defence as well. Paddy Ryder is obviously a perfect fit for someone like Rowan Marshall at the different stages of their career, and both being really good forwards. Like Rowan had a terrific breakout year as a ruck and with his positioning around the ground last year, but he's almost a better forward. So it's a terrific sort of balance to have there. I think I probably can't give you anything that you haven't already discussed about those guys, but we're really happy. The trick will be using those individual skills and fitting them into the roles that we want, because that's always the challenge with new guys in their first year at a club, and at the moment the signs are really good.
It's probably hard to predict things like improvement, but do you sort of sit down and ever have an overall as a club and say, well, this is where we think we're at based on all of this? And it might be a difficult one to answer, but do you have an assessment as to where you think we're at in the scheme of things going into this season?
So we obviously did a pretty harsh review on 2018, and then did the same layers of review on 2019. A lot of things went from being bottom four to being a middling club. So we're not really outstanding at anything, and that's what we need to work on. We need to find a signature that says this is St Kilda as a winning side. But yeah, the signs are there. So we were a 9-win team last year. When we looked at all the metrics in different areas, that's probably about where we should have been. Our percentage was only 81 or 82 at the end of the year. We needed to improve our goal kicking, but we also had some bad luck. The teams against us converted at ridiculous rates. And when you go back to the vision and go back to the individual shots, we were a bit unlucky with some of those margins. So, there's a lot to build on from that. And we also had a very young list on the park with all the injuries last year. So from a demographic point of view and from what we think will naturally improve, we're in a really good position.
And going off the numbers that you see and what you're looking at and, I guess, a little bit predicting, to steal a term, who do you think is on the bubble? Who's going to burst this year that someone we really need to watch out for that may not be one that we're looking at normally? Or
yeah, I know Ben Long's getting a bit of buzz, and justifiably. He's getting a lot of the ball in his new role. I'm looking forward to seeing some of the young guys, obviously, out on the park. Hopefully Ryan Burns gets a bit of a run because he's a promising talent. Max King is the obvious one that we want to see play, as soon as he's able. It's seeing it all mesh together. So, a lot of my job is just getting the team metrics and the individual assessments. The coaches are spending hours and hours on that. So I can add a bit of statistics to that, but when they know what the role is that player is going to play, my measurement of it is kind of superfluous. They're getting most of that information themselves.
Another new face at the club also come over from Hawthorn, Jared Roughhead.
Yep.
It's been pretty widely publicised that he doesn't have a specific role, I guess, is that he's part of the footy department. He works a little bit in recruitment, he works a little bit in coaching and a few different things. But what sort of how important has it been for our young group to have a guy like him out on the field in training sessions and in the office to be able to bounce questions off?
It's enormous, yeah. You can see the respect that everyone has for Ruff. And, as you said, his role changes depending on the time of the season. So he was quite involved with the list management as well as learning what he needed to know, giving his feedback to the process. And now it's obviously coaching the forwards as well. Being an advisor for the forwards and his overall seniority within the game. He, the other day he pointed out he got into Hawthorn at 17 and left it at 33, so that's half his life in that role. And he just brings a lot of that lived experience to players who are only just starting out.
Final one from me, does that sort of those that are in charge of those areas, does that always win, or will sometimes there be that conflict like there is in most departments where the coach will want something? And I guess the example I give is doing a bit of work with Terry Wallace. He spoke about when he first arrived at Richmond that the physical team or the medical team would have their certain metrics that they went by, and he was in the middle of a drill and he heard a whistle blow, and all of a sudden the players walked off the ground in the middle of a drill, and he was looking around going, what's happening there? And it was actually the medical staff that blew the whistle and said, that's it, that's the allocated minutes for the week. And he couldn't believe it, and he was tearing shreds off them saying, well, if I want to keep training, we're going to keep training. Is there ever that sort of pushback where the fitness staff will say, he's probably done enough, and the coach will say, well, no, he hasn't, not yet?
That's been one of the really positive aspects that I've seen at St Kilda. It's a pretty experienced high-performance group there, and they're in constant conversation with the coaches, with Brett Ratton and the other coaches about, here's the load that this player needs this week, here's what we're going to try and do in training, here's maybe the extra that he needs to do. And I haven't seen a single argument about it, which maybe that's not a good sign, but no, that they're really... they're tracking quite well what needs to be done, and we've got a wooden table in here. I'll just touch wood. The injury list at the moment says nil. That's unheard of.
I haven't seen that in a very long time.
No, not for us anyway.
Yeah.
Well, Darren, thank you very much for stopping by and giving us some of those insights. It's a massive year. Good luck for you and the team. We certainly hope that the numbers keep tracking the right way.
Thank you.
Thanks, Darren.
Well, that was Darren O'Shannessy joining us in the studio. It's been another big edition of Unplugged. We're coming up against Collingwood this week, and then in the AFLW it is Carlton on Saturday night. And really, they do need a result if they are going to shape this season at all, boys. We've got one hit out to obviously finalise things before North Melbourne in round one.
Really important, really important. I think we go in with a really strong team, and I'm keen to see how we fare against what is a legitimate contender. In terms of their playing list and midfield especially. And, of course, it'll be interesting to see how Rowan Marshall and Paddy Ryder go against Brodie Grundy.
Yeah, definite opponent to have a real good look against. They're going to be right up there again this year. I mean, yes, it's still just a practice match, as people will say, but, I mean, yeah, get a good look at who they're bringing into their side as well, what they're going to change, what we can counteract with when later on we come up against them in the season. But it's just going to give a good idea where we are running into round one.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep.
If you'd like to get involved at any stage, we've had a couple of requests for the stickers as well, and we'll get those out to you. But if you are keen on the Unplugged bumper stickers, you can email us unplugged@gmail.com. You can hit us up on all of the socials. Nick, it's at Unplugged on Twitter. Or at
Unplugged on Twitter, /Unplugged on Facebook, and at Unplugged Podcast on Insta.
Yep. So send us some questions. We'll go through all of that as the season goes. So it'll be a weekly episode once we do draw towards round one. So our next show will be previewing our hit out with the Kangaroos and wrapping all of the action from the Marsh Community Series. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers.